welcome to Voices from the Left. I'm your host, Craig. Thanks for listening. Today's quote: "The native must realize that colonialism never gives anything away for nothing." Frantz Fanon. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Indigo, aka at Whatsqualia from Instagram, about decolonization. Hi, Indigo. Thanks for joining.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. So we'll get right into it. Will you please tell me about yourself, your background, etc.?
Hi, I'm Indigo. I'm currently going to Oberlin College. I'm a jazz composition, creative writing major. I also like to animate. I also like to, collaborate, organize, and push people towards collective liberatory goals. And I try to do that through my creativity and kind of just set example, inspire people.
Very cool. So one thing that interested me in wanting to talk to you was that you offer decolonization sessions for people. So can you start by explaining what decolonization, what the definition of decolonization means to you or is to you?
So what decolonization means to me is colonized people regaining sovereignty over their land, their possessions, their way of life, um, their identities, just everything that was stripped away in terms of freedoms or way of life, to be restored in some way, or at least sovereignty regained over that. And I think, I know we'll probably get to this, but I do think it's up to each group of people to decide what specifically that looks like for them. I don't think, we can all be experts on other people's decolonization process, but essentially it really means like to undo what was done via the colonization.
And why is decolonization important to you in particular?
Well, it's important because it's literally millions of people's livelihood. The Western gaze is kind of like, oh, it's kind of a buzzword. It's kind of like a field of thinking or whatever. It's thought about in a very distant way compared to people who are literally like experiencing violence and limitations because of colonization, and experiencing grief and loss, and kind of missing out on certain things that uh, certain pockets of the Western world don't really understand how painful that is and how personal. It's not really about some sort of theory or number or rationalization. It's just really pure humanity, just caring about people and also caring about yourself and your people. If you're being targeted, there's a vast spectrum of types of colonization and how awful and overt compared to covert and whatever. But like all of it is, it's a collective struggle. It's like a huge weight on humanity, and once that weight is lifted, we will all feel so much more free, and free to express and dream and not feel like you're constantly treading water.
Sure. So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but maybe you could expand on a little bit. So does decolonization have one set of guidelines, or is it different for each colonized peoples?
Yeah, I do believe the people who got colonized are experts on their colonization. There's going to be research done, there's going to be studies, there's going to be fields, there's going to be opinions, there's going to be politics and coverage and literature, news, all of that stuff. But the folks who were there and experienced it and experienced the aftermath of it and have it in their family history, those folks are going to have the most accurate and well-rounded picture of the situation, in my opinion. And even if their methods of decolonization are perfect, I don't think it's up to anyone else to kind of impose what it really should be or whatnot. And, you can see movements that people celebrate. For example, the movement against the South African apartheid, some people are saying like, oh, Nelson Mandela has to condemn the violent, acts of resistance. Or you hear people talk about Nat Turner and things like that. And it's kind of like, yeah, whether or not they're way of resisting was perfect or not is not really relevant, because the act of violent colonization being pushed on them is far more violent than their resistance. Is kind of silly. Like, why even focus on how do they do it? You know what I mean? Like, just great.
Yeah.
They're doing decolonization. That's great. Like, I think that's the point. And we should be really more critical of, all the other things going on that are forcing people to have to, engage in this work.
Sure. So you mentioned South Africa. And I just want to, I guess, just kind of point out that, like, let's say an indigenous person from what we call Canada, what they think or they want to happen for decolonization is going to be different to an indigenous person, say, in southern Mexico, right? Or Brazil, for example, right? Because they were all colonized, right, by primarily white Europeans, but it all had a little different tinge, is my understanding. Yep. So they should be the ones making the decisions, right, about how to go about getting out of it.
Absolutely. And, all of these folks live in different environments. They have different types of relationships with their environment, and the way that they were colonized may have exploited or changed or damaged different parts of their environment. And so that's all going to end up with people having different demands and needs. But you do see this trend of indigenous people being pushed to less fertile places or less desirable places. And then, the buffaloes being killed, intentionally destroying the environment, the ecosystem, the way survival worked for them. So I think a lot of what people are demanding with land back also involves, restoring the balance of the environment. Is like a very huge part of it, which is a collective human goal that we are all realizing is so important. So it's kind of like,
definitely. Well, and I can't, from what I can tell, the people who know how to take care of the land the best were the people who were here first, right?
I mean, absolutely. And it's
right.
People kind of, I feel like they turn it. Well, I don't want to say caricature, but sometimes it's like this mystical, like, this spiritual, it is mystical. But the biggest part of it is pragmatic, which is these people have been here for so long, they have a very deep understanding of how the land works. If you just come to a place, colonize it, you don't know nothing about the environment, you have no experience surviving there, you don't have centuries of wisdom about how to do things passed down. It's literally, people say, like, think of it as barbaric versus, technologically advanced. But if you think about it, creating the right relationships with nature is a type of technology. There's already some advanced stuff going on that we've just lost or just abandoned because, there's, a better way, supposedly, right?
Right. Well, and you don't really have to look very hard to find the problems of technology on the environment, right? Like Ecuador, for example, Texaco poisoned the Amazon, right? Poisoned the people that live there, right? For years, decades even, right? And they actually had Steve Donziger locked up because he helped the Ecuadorian people sue Texaco, which is now Chevron, and win like a humongous amount of money, which they haven't paid a dime of because they just keep fighting it, and they lock the people up. Like, that's, they're drilling for oil and they're intentionally polluting the Amazon. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you think about capitalism, and I mean, the relationship between settler colonialism and capitalism is basically like, I see this land, these people here, I think my military can defeat them, looks like money to me. And then they just rape the land, and it affects, obviously it's not just negatively affecting the people, it's negatively affecting the entire environment, everything that lives there. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so insanely destructive. And it's just like, okay, yeah, let's deforest this, let's pollute this, let's, sometimes fracking so much that the landscape is getting all messed up because like things are sinking in and stuff. It's just like, oh my goodness. really caring about safety violations when it comes to extracting certain things and exploiting, people for labor in the areas that you want to extract something. Just completely see part of the intelligence of, I guess, commodities or creating anything is that you want to create something that is not going to destroy the environment. Like, that's a really good thing you should think of before you start making something.
Right.
So it's like, okay, how am I going to source the materials sustainably? What's going to make sense? Am I making things too hard, shipping things from everywhere, all over the place? Is there something I can do that's like more locally based, or just something that makes sense? And then, is it going to be, something that takes forever to decompose? Is there a way to dispose of it? Is there a way to reuse it? These are just common sense things that societies have thought about before already. You know what I mean? And now it's just like, oh no, we're starting from scratch. Like, how do we get this waste problem? It's like, why did you invent trash? Since when did we just think of trash? Like, let's just throw it in a landfill. Like, no, it's always, let's compost, let's recycle, let's, you know what I mean? Let's not just create a bunch of junk. This is like common sense, like how you're going to take care of your home, like the planet, your home. You live here. Like, you're just going to keep trashing over here and then just living there. Like, oh, let's just let the global warming happen. Oh, well, like, what is this insanity? It's literally insanity. Why would you imagine to create something that it destroys where you live? That just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no, they're putting people over profits over people, right? Like, that's what they do constantly
too, though.
Right. Yeah. And their kids and grandkids, like, it's like the most selfish thing they can do.
It's not even more cool than what nature already provided, though. It's just like nature has its own luxurious paradises if you don't destroy them or exploit them that you can really enjoy. But instead you rather, it's like a collective hallucination, honestly.
It sure is.
Think about it. It's just like, I'm just going to imagine if you had a house and you just took a bat and you said, you know what? Someone will pay me for this drywall. I'm just going to sell it. And you just start banging your walls. And then you're just like, who cares about my house? Who cares where I live? I can get some money from this drywall.
Yeah,
imagine how deranged that seems. But that's kind of how we treat the planet, where it's like, it's not just, oh, that country that you destroyed the environment. It's like, it's the earth, the planet Earth, our home. Now you can, not that it's about you, but now you can never go enjoy that place how it's meant to be enjoyed. Like, you destroyed it.
Right.
That's a loss. That's a collective loss of humanity. Like, humanity lost when you destroyed that environment, not just those people over there.
Right. Yeah. 100%. So I mentioned this earlier, but you offer decolonization sessions for people to interact with you, to try and help them with that process if they want to. Can you describe what those sessions are like?
Yeah, honestly, in those sessions, I'm not even really pushing towards anything. I'm more so kind of trying to understand folks and maybe investigating a little bit and trying to basically be a space where they can feel safe, where it's like, simultaneously, I'm being authentic, I'm keeping it real, I'm holding you accountable, but at the same time, we're not being catty, we're not debating. You're free to be imperfect. You're free to admit a mistake. You're free to be confused or not know or whatever. I'm not there to judge. I'm simply just there to kind of reflect for you maybe something it is you're searching for or trying to better understand or get a grasp on, and inspire you with, a lot of people get these hiccups like, well, I don't know about this, or I'm hearing these opposing things, or I'm just stuck at this bottleneck or whatever. And then I try to just present ideas and angles that can help them open up and feel like, you know what? Okay, there's a way forward. I can keep going with this. My heart's in the right place, and I can keep, figuring things out and how to really show up the way I want to. So I think it's just about kind of encouragement, presence, and being a positive reflection to folks who are already heading in the right direction.
Sure. So where would you say a person should start if they are just hearing about decolonization from this episode? Hopefully someone's listening. If they do, where should they start?
Well, I think it's kind of a funny question to me because it is so like linear thinking, like, where should we start? I mean, I don't know. It's everywhere. We're literally immersed in like we're living.
Sure.
You're swimming in it. We're fish in water, So it's like start by kind of just observing layers of things. So we have, because of advertisements, because of media, because of social norms, because of narratives, because of whatever, history books, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, all kinds of media. We think of things a certain way, but if you really start to ask yourself the deeper questions, like, so what was here before that? And how is that that way? And how does that really work? And what are the demographics like? And how do you know what I mean? Like, if
Sure.
you really start unpacking the layers beneath just the society around you, you can see so much that has to do with decolonization, especially in America. I mean, this is a settler colonial empire. So it's like everywhere you can look around and find a story about colonization and start to understand at least a direction or a perspective or a frame for decolonization. So I would just say, like, there's a part of your curriculum that was always missing. And it's just like, okay, discover what that part is, you know what I mean? And I think the biggest part is just kind of understanding in the beginning. I feel like so many people aren't really talking about it, and definitely not really centering it. It seems to still be kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a hard thing for people that, especially settlers, white people
Yeah,
in, right, like it's a hard thing to wrap their head around, right?
I know. And
And
it's,
I Go ahead.
and I was just gonna say, yeah, it's crazy. And I can imagine literally, and I mean, it's a hard thing for a lot of people. Not I don't know, not just white people. So it's a hard
Sure.
thing for a lot of people to wrap their head around all over the place. But it's also an insane thing for the indigenous people to wrap their heads around. It's absolutely bonkers. It's like insane for them to wrap their heads around. So it's like, yeah, we know it's crazy, but please engage, because, like,
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, we're just talking about humanity. I think most, I don't want to say most, I want to say most. I think most of the people here in America are good hearted people who, like, have some decency or whatever, but they're just not engaged with, like, what's really, really, really going on. And they're like, we read all this stuff in high school, even go to college or whatever. We think we found the resources that were really telling us what it is, but there still could be blind spots where you're like, but have you been immersed in those environments that you're talking about or that you say you understand? Have
Mhm.
you, developed community with these folks that you're advocating for, etc.? Like, those are that's really walking the walk. That's showing, like, okay, you're really about it. Because literally, why not? Why would you, advocate from a distance? What is that about? Like, that's kind of, so I feel like I kind of just look for how integrated, how you know, how much is someone contributing to the community and actually, I don't know, expanding, I guess, mutual aid, stuff like that, rather than just like making a platform off of talking about something, or, you know what I mean, doing something from
Sure.
a distance. That's kind of like where I'm coming from with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you mentioned mutual aid. That's a good segue. So, um, one of the things that a lot of people all around the globe, but especially in the United States, uh, need help with is their material conditions, right? Food, water, clothing, shelter, etc. Right? Um, what is Mutual aid is a great way to help with that, right? As best that people can, right? Um, you know, and for people that aren't listening, mutual aid is just the idea that you help each other out, right? You
Mm-hmm.
build a system outside of capitalism that
Yeah.
helps each other. It can
Yeah.
be giving someone money if they need it. It can be, you know, lending someone your bike if they need a ride, giving them, if they need to go somewhere themselves. If you have a car and they need a ride, give them a ride, right? It can mean giving them food. We see examples of it pop up where there's just like community refrigerators, right? That just
Yeah.
have food in them. Um, I've seen some examples where um, people talk about governments in particular, whether it's local municipalities or even state governments, rather than planting oak trees, pine trees in town where there might be people who, are houseless or are food insecure, plant fruit trees, plant
Yep.
apple trees if it plant apple trees so that someone can eat an apple off of it walking down the street, right? Or a pear tree. Obviously, it depends where you live, what's going to grow. But like, we see community gardens a lot, right?
Yeah.
So these are examples of mutual aid that we're talking about. And there's a lot of others, and it depends what it is. A lot of times it's just a matter of money sometimes, that people just need $5 for an Uber, although it's probably $20 now. But that's what we're talking about with mutual aid. When you and I chatted last week, we talked about one way people can help their material conditions, if they're able, of course, beyond mutual aid, is to start a business of their own, if possible. And I imagine that doesn't mean you have to pay rent at a place that you have an actual store, right? Or an actual shop. It can just mean doing something at your house if you can, right? Can you talk to me about what you think is the best way to go about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you feel called to it, and especially if you see problems with the market that you might be interested in, and you're like, man, these, top companies in this market, they all have the same problem, or they all do this same thing that I don't agree with, or whatever. Make a version of that you think is more ideal, that you think solves the problem. It can be from a leftist angle. There's a bunch of leftists who are looking for companies that they can trust, that they think they should buy stuff from, commodities that people need that are not just easily replaceable, where it's like they have to get it from somewhere. So if you feel like you can fill that market gap and do something the right way, then I would say go for it, because honestly, I know everyone wants to boycott these companies. And I know everyone is tired of being wage slaves or tired of working for companies they're not satisfied with. So if you have the opportunity to start your own and actually make it acceptable to the community, actually have some values, actually, do things with integrity, I think that's a wonderful thing for a lot of folks. And we can steal the market share from fascists. That's my idea. Yeah. It's not a permanent solution, but it's definitely, I think, harm reduction and creating better jobs for folks.
Right. Sure. No, I think that's great, because it goes along with mutual aid, right? Creating something outside the status quo that can help people, right? Yeah.
And with mutual aid, I was going to say about food sovereignty and whatnot, I'm going to go back to this frame. I'm trying to illustrate a new frame, which is like, literally, Western imperialism is like insanity. And I don't mean that as like an insult. I mean it as like, literally, it's crazy. Why would you live in an environment where you naturally did find food, where there was fruiting trees, where there was things that you foraged for, where you did have a relationship with your environment, and then turn into like, oh, now I have to go to a grocery store to find food? It's like, how strange is that? How weird and absurd. It's one thing if you have a grocery store, great, but why destroy all the places where you would normally forage? Why would you not keep growing fruit trees and stuff like that? Why are you abolishing food forests? I don't think there should be parks with these big old, acres of cut grass with a few trees sprinkled about. No, why? Just let it be a forest. Let everything grow there. Let people pick berries and stuff. Let people pick fruit. Like, why do you need to like make it all like aesthetic or something? Like, it's just so weird, because it's like, okay, fine, it looks nice, but if you're destroying like natural ways that we just had food, sustenance, and connected with our environment, what is the point of this? And if it's because you want to make money by selling lower quality stuff, it's just so depressing. It's just so sad and dystopian. Like, we can't even just pick our fruit off the trees. We gotta go get the GMO pesticide drop. Like, come on, this is absurd.
Yeah. Well, and for sure, the part about commodifying food, that's the capitalism part, right?
It's just crazy. And water too. It's just like all our water is messed up. It's just like, man. And then these bottled water companies just stealing water from places. It's just like, oh my God.
That's.
It said water is not a human right. What? What are you talking about? Just utter insanity. But it can't be normalized, because I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I totally disagree with the person who said that about the water, but I do get this brand of water sometimes. So,
Right.
I don't really, it's like, no, you have to be engaged if you want this to stop, because they're just
Right.
sneaking it right under our noses,
Yeah.
which is complete insanity. We see how many companies came out and they're just doing horrific things. And we're like, wow, we've just been consuming this blindly for how long?
Yep. Well, in the water in particular, now this isn't going to apply to everybody, I realize, but like if you have the means to drink clean tap water instead of buying bottled water if you can.
Yeah, or get
right?
a home filter. I mean, there's nothing
Sure.
wrong with that.
Right. Like that's
Save money in
obvious.
the long run.
Yeah. If you have the means to do that, of course, not everybody's going to, but that's one easy way to help, right?
Yeah.
If there's less demand for bottled water, they won't take as much, right? They won't make
gross.
as much plastic, right, to bottle it, and it helps in a lot of ways.
It's full of microplastics, and it's gross.
Yeah,
it tastes gross.
Like, yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and I can't name the source off the top of my head because I read it years ago, but I read a study a few years ago that there's actually like people now, adults and kids, being born with microplastics in their lungs. Ooh. So like this is why people, one way you can help stop that kind of nonsense.
Yeah,
right?
That's the thing about all this consumer stuff is like, not only is the way of producing a product horrible and just completely resource stripping, also the product is terrible in quality, right. And it's terrible for you.
Right.
It's like you're literally killing your customer base just for short-term profits. It's like,
right.
Bro, it's just so insane. It's like, how could you even, like, why are more people like, wow, that's crazy? Like, why is this just so like, yeah, up. That's just kind of how these industries are. It's like, no, it's absolute insanity. Like, it doesn't, bullshit. On a pragmatic, logical level. If you're, let's say we're in Fortnite or we're in, I don't know, what's the game with the blocks? Minecraft. We're in Minecraft, okay? Money exists, you can buy stuff, but it's like, ultimately, you're working with resources. Like, why would you, why would you go about things this way? It's just not even the smartest way to use the resources that exist. It's just ways to make money off of using those resources. And like, why do you want to make money off of water and healthcare? Like, it's just like, just the most basic things. Like, you can be so much more creative, but you rather just milk that. And they say, oh, capitalism, it feels creativity and competition. It's like, yeah, you've got people fighting over selling folks water.
Yeah. That's why that's why like every car company has a car that looks the same as every other car company, right? That's why there's a crispy chicken sandwich at every fucking fast food joint, right? Exactly. Like, that's not innovation. It's the opposite.
No, it's really not. Like, I mean, and it's so much you can get into about it. It's so crazy on so many levels. But I do think, a lot of Black authors have talked about double consciousness. I know Frederick Douglass famously talked about double consciousness, and obviously something Black people experience and BIPOC people overall experience in America, especially. But I really think there's a double consciousness, not just like in our minds, but like a double consciousness that exists overall in America, where there's like one consciousness where it's like, wow, this got ravished. Like, this is crazy. This is jacked up. This is just depraved. This is depressing. And it's like, okay, we got to be hopeful. You got to keep pushing. Like, you got to like make something happen or whatever. But it's kind of like, you're like, wow, yikes. And then there's another consciousness that's like, oh yeah, this America, like, it's chill, whatever. Like, it's kind of imperfect. It's not necessarily exactly equitable, but it's pretty chill. It's diverse. I've learned so many different, like, you know what I mean? It's like a whole different viewpoint where it's like you don't even center the most horrific things that have happened here. It's kind of out of the main view. And the main view is like the hope, the opportunity, the American dream, these little brownie points. Oh, look at this civil rights. The needle moved half an inch. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Look. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, celebrating whatever. But it's like, yeah, but it's not. It's it's not even engaging with the harshest realities where other people are coming from.
Yep.
And so I think that double consciousness actually does exist in America. And I think it's something we have to kind of identify and examine and critique and tackle and try to understand and break it down so we can like understand each other better. Because I do see this kind of like almost like I don't know how to explain it. It's very interesting.
Sure. So as far as like trying to help someone understand that or help them wade through that, what do you think is a way to do that, to like try and explain to someone that like, look, yeah, we have these things that we have, but it's because of the, you know, the oppression or repression of the exploitation of the land, people, and resources that were here first, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is a good way to do that?
I think sometimes you have to reframe things because obviously, in resources that we might come in contact with and information that we typically consume, it's framed in a certain way to make us biased or just oblivious. Sometimes it's framed by omission, often, where it's not really seeming antagonistic, but it's just leaving stuff out. And people just might not have even heard certain things. So what I like to do is like I start to ask questions like, do you know about XYZ? Whatever, and then I kind of fill in the blanks, and then I give them a bunch of context. I try to give them a little bit of understanding of the history. I try to give them some examples of what's going on. I try to give them a viewpoint of different layers of the effects of a problem, and I try to show them how the system is interconnected with all of that. I try to show them like it's not just all these separate, discrete problems. This problem, that problem, this problem. It's all connected. It's all caused by these same patterns of behavior and these same systems that enable it. And often a lot of the same actors are participating in multiple different atrocities. Sure. And so I try to show them how everything's interconnected. And I think that starts to make them not center the narrative that is more comfortable as much. But they start to let in that like horror and shock of like, oh my God, wait a second. Sure. And I think it just gets something turning where they start to get curious about it. And it could be like a shell shock sometimes, like to really connect the dots. I try to kind of see where their blind spots is and tell them like resources where they can fill it in or perspectives that they could check out.
Gotcha. All right. So do you have any tips for people that are trying to manage their way through Western institutions that may either be at the beginning of their decolonial or decolonization process, either as an individual or their mind, right? Or people who are already way deep into it, but are maybe getting frustrated with, maybe continually getting beaten back by what's happening, whether it's at universities or with the cops or, just politicians, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think this is obviously a huge, huge struggle and a complex problem to deal with and navigate and balance your own goals and your own livelihood and security with, risks that you feel that you need to take towards a certain goal, collective goal, and being strategic about that. And I think the most important thing here is realizing that this really is these institutions. Not only are there places where people kind of get indoctrinated a lot of times, whether it be a corporation, whether it be, something for the state, whether it be a school, there's going to be some sort of ideology driving the whole thing. And a lot of it these days is kind of a neoliberal type ideology. And you cannot approach things unironically all the time. You cannot always be genuine in those spaces. You are going to have to code switch for survival sometimes. You're going to have to scope out the scene and figure out what is the most pragmatic thing for you to do in the situation towards your goals. And it's not always about butting heads or overtly duking it out with some dramatic interview clash type thing, because that, sure. There's risks with that, you know what I mean? So it's like you got to kind of figure out how can you infiltrate, how can you make an impact, how can you do what needs to be done without kind of shooting yourself in the foot because of how messed up the environment is.
Hmm.
And I've ran into my own issues myself, and kind of what I learned is like, just because a system may not accurately or properly see you, respect you, consider you, etc., or other folks, does not mean you can't earn the respect of people that are operating in that system and have an impact on them. And I
Hmm.
think not sleeping on that is also important, because a lot of people don't realize how many administrators, how many, folks that work at schools, folks that work, I don't know, depending on the corporation, maybe different folks who actually do care about what they do. And if you give them feedback that normally people wouldn't say, or you say, oh, they don't care, or whatever, if you figure out how to talk to the right people, you could make a positive impact and at least get a conversation started. It's one of those things where you
Hmm.
have to weigh out,
Sure.
what is really worth my time and what is worth my risk, and seeing where you can make an impact
All
as
right.
much as you can.
That makes sense. Sure.
Yep.
All right. So how does someone's spirituality relate to their decolonization or revolutionary ideas?
I think spirituality is something, I mean, it's obviously very broad. There's all kinds of different expressions of it, but I think it's something that connects us to nature, honestly, in a sense, where we have some sort of inclination to praise, to be in awe, to feel interconnected, to feel connected to something powerful, to feel love, to feel safety, sometimes warmth, inspiration. These are just very human things, and these are things that drive nature. And I think spirituality is just a way of a culture expressing that, or a way of just a human being, a consciousness expressing that in their own way. And I think it's directly connected to revolution, because I think it's so intertwined with joy and resilience and
Hmm.
faith. I think, people kind of think of faith as like, well, why would you believe in something if you don't know it's real and da 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 da, whatever. Faith is not really about knowing that the thing is real. It's literally not about that. It's about orienting your mind in the direction towards a thing that you desire. And as you meditate on that thing you desire, with through faith, through your rituals or whatever you're doing, or just your sensibility because you're a spiritual being, as you meditate on that, your mind will focus on it more, and you'll find more opportunities towards that goal. And then
Hmm.
you will also be more attuned to notice when you are successful in the direction of your goals. So then you say, hey, my prayer worked. I see I also worked on it and saw more opportunities, and I, saw more successes or results I was looking for. And then you keep doing that over and over. It's like faith is actually just a very effective mindset for making things happen, because you cut through the fluff of, oh, well, what if this or what if that, or maybe that won't work, and da, 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 overthinking and doubting, and you know what I mean, kind of being afraid, stressed out. Faith, you feel joyful, you feel excited, you're anticipating. A lot of times you have a lot of stamina, because you're like, I know we're going to get there, I know we're going to make this happen. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's gratitude in it too. So I think faith is a very powerful tool, regardless of which ideology or cultural expression it's attached to. I just think the use of faith is obviously been shown to make things happen, or else why would it be so prevalent? Why does everyone have some sort of faith? Maybe not everyone now, but every place in the world you go, you can find some type of faith practice there. Every culture tends to have some type of faith. So it's like,
Sure.
what is that about? Why it's almost like a social spiritual technology or something.
Sure.
I kind of feel like that's what it is.
Well, and I think what you're maybe describing too is like, cultures that had, we're talking, 1,000 years ago, right? Cultures that have never met each other before, right? When they meet, they find out they have all of these things in common, right? Like they have a spiritual sense, right? They have
Yeah.
a sense of belonging, of community, etc., right? And so it's part of being human, I think, right?
Yeah,
More so
absolutely.
than it is what type of human you are, quote unquote, or where
Exactly.
you're from, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We just all have our different ways of getting towards similar things. And, it's also affected by our lifestyles and all kinds of other stuff. It's just,
Sure.
um, yeah, And I also like to think of it as like, people think it's science or spirituality, and I so much think it's so much both. It's so much both. And it's like, yeah, spirituality has to do with things that either we're just now starting to discover or we haven't discovered yet, but there's some sort of wisdom behind it because there's a reason why it was preserved and carried down. Obviously there could be esoteric things sprinkled throughout everything, but you always find stuff where, you know, people discover, oh, this is why this prayer position works like this. This is why this herb actually has this effect on you. Scientists have discovered, you know, so, okay, the medicine man or the whoever's practicing that religion or that spirituality already knew that it worked. Like, so I think like people are starting to study auras and electromagnetic biospheres and thought waves and stuff like that. And I think, you know, people forget, like, yeah, you are water, you are minerals, like in the dirt, you are electricity, literally electricity.
Yeah. Yep.
You are atoms, just like everything else around you is also atoms. It's like you're just a part of nature happening. And I think we don't even realize how magical that is. And it's like spirituality is not really this as whimsical or kind of far-fetched as I feel like it's framed today. In a lot of cases, it's kind of like, yeah, we have to make sense of this fantastical existence somehow. I mean, what do you mean? You're just like, you're on a floating rock. Like, of course you're gonna try to figure out what God means, or like, what is the meaning? Like, of course we have to put these ideas somewhere. So
sure. All right. So, you know, kind of, I think this next question maybe kind of goes along with what the spirituality part of this. So all material things that humans have created, right? Whether it's cars or houses or bow and arrows or baskets, whatever it is across the spectrum, all of these material things existed as an idea in someone's head, right?
Yep.
Or came out of, you know, necessity breeds invention, right? Like, but someone still had to think up a way, like, hey, how do I get this water from the lake to where I need it to be, right?
Exactly.
Maybe for whatever reason we don't want to live on the water, right? Because of, maybe it's dangerous because of the animals that live in the water, right? Maybe we need to remove ourselves from that. How do we get the water there? Well, someone had to invent some kind of bucket, right? They weren't always plastic, right? So how can we help people get their ideas manifested, whatever it is?
So yeah, I think it's a part of being observant of things around you, nature, and the way you interact, and like what you're actually doing in your life. We're so trained to think like, I'm at work, I'm at school, I'm earning money, I'm getting this grade, I'm da 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 da. It's like there's all kinds of other exchanges that aren't the official recognized exchanges that are happening that you have to pay attention to, where there's opportunities to be resourceful. Also, I feel like it's important for us to realize that the way nature evolved is through that mental process. This species thinks, I want to use this resource that way. That resource says, oh, you want to use me for this? Okay, I'm going to adapt more in your direction so that you keep using me for that. So you'll keep propagating me. And they're like, okay, cool, symbiote. Like, nature literally evolved that way of collective ideas back and forth, mirroring, having a relationship, and then striking harmony somehow. And it's not just humans manifesting their ideas. Everything's expressing their ideas. Everything around you that is alive is an expressed idea that's just happening for you and happening with you. And I think we don't realize how magical that is already in itself. And it's just like, you should be inspired by just existing, but we've been cut off from nature in a lot of ways. So we don't really feel that all that you feel when you go in the woods. You're just like, wow. You just feel so, something about the tree, something about the atmosphere, something about the collectivity of it, something about the chorus of it is just magical. And I think manifesting is not as much about, oh, I'm going to manifest my individual thing. Here's my idea, whatever. It's more about getting into the flow of nature, and you see how things are manifesting for everyone, for everything constantly. It's just always happening. There's a flow. You can get connected with it. You can find symbiotic relationships. You can enter harmonious ecosystems, whether that be between whatever kind of being, humans, whatever kind of space you create, mental spaces, whatever's going on. It's just like there's so much that you can be tapped into. I don't really think it's even necessary to focus so much on the exact form or shape. It's more important to tap into the vibe and kind of see those positive feedback loops start working in your life. Once you find that mode where you function, you know, at your prime and you're feeling in the flow.
Sure.
Yes. Right. And I think there's something spooky about it too. I'm not going to say I understand, but there's something about planting seeds of energy with some intention or action or just positive thought and just things. It's like as you lighten up about life, things seem to kind of lighten up too sometimes. And like I said, I can't prove anything. I just kind of noticed there's some sort of correspondence that I sense. So I also think letting go, not overthinking things, not basically constantly putting yourself in the stressed out energy where it's like, well, that's what you're manifesting, more stress. It's kind of like engage with that idea with the energy that you want it to exude once you create it.
Sure. Well, and I definitely know that there's something to be said about spending time in nature, like 100%. That helps people, right? I've experienced it myself personally. Like I grew up camping. I grew up going on hikes, fishing, you know, spending time building snow forts, whatever it was, right? Like as a kid. So I totally appreciate that. And I was fortunate enough to be able to travel a lot when I was a kid within the United States and see a lot of different places. So I get that feeling like of being connected to nature and just kind of, you know, returning that energy or reciprocating that energy, right? Nature can give you energy and you can give it back by being a good steward, right?
Exactly. And it can give, that feedback loop. That's kind of what I meant by manifesting. It's like that feedback loop can be so incredible if you really tune into nature and understand it, because there's so many opportunities to have positive forms of abundance. We kind of really think like it's either we're being, you know, conservationists or we're being gluttons and capitalists or whatever. But you can create abundance in a way that's actually healthy. That's like that's the original blueprint. You know what I mean? Like we can live in that state where, you know, we have cultivated that relationship with nature where we can experience that on so many levels. I like to kind of remind people, I'm like, you know, you can't eat money. The real thing,
right?
The real commodity is something that nature has created. And the commodity part of nature and the currency is the made up idea part. And the nature is the real thing.
Right.
So it's like, this idea is going to change. This idea is not the point. The point is nature. And while, yes, so many markets control natural commodities, there's still ways to reconnect with nature where it's like they literally just can't legislate you out of interacting with nature in every single way. And you can totally do whatever you want with nature on a lot of public property and definitely on your private property. By the way, you can plant seeds pretty much anywhere on public property. Just throw some seeds out. I mean, come on.
Sure. Guerrilla gardening, right?
You know what I mean? Exactly. I'm saying, everyone watching this, please, let's normalize this.
I love that.
There should just be food everywhere. Duh, come on. It's just an upgrade. There's other countries that are naturally like this. It's like, haha, America, you don't got fruit trees around. Like, we just eat it. Just imagine we're going to the freaking grocery store for some unripe, like, it's so bad. It's so bad.
We turned, you know, producing your own food or, you know, communal food into a commodity to be bought and sold, right? And it's your own fault. It's your own fault, quote unquote, if you don't have it then. Right?
Yes,
that's
exactly.
what
it's
capitalism
like
has done.
Environment.
Yeah, that's what capitalism has done.
And it's messing up all the other animals too, because it's like we just tinker with the environment so much. We got all these invasive species every other year, and you know, just all these things going extinct, almost extinct. It's just like, what are we doing? People, think they still have a distance with animals too. It's like, whoa, yeah, that's sad. This animal went extinct. I'm like, no. You just wiped out a whole species. Like,
Right.
bro, you just destroy. Like the Earth spent billions of years making this for you to
Yep.
enjoy, and you destroyed it. Wow, like that's insane. Why are we so careless? It was like, even if it was an accident, you need to fix whatever is causing this problem, because you can't just be like, oops, just destroy the whole species. My bad. Like, oops, oh no, we have to try to preserve it. It's like, no, whatever you're doing that's messing it up, please fix it now. Like, obviously,
Yes.
you
Yep.
would think like, I don't even understand. But it's like, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's just really insane. Like,
Yeah.
it's just truly insane.
Yeah. It's
Humans.
it's baffling to me. Like
Yeah.
it seems obvious to me you don't want to destroy the world you live in. Right? Like, why do
Yes.
you want
That's
to
what I'm
do that?
saying.
Especially when you're just doing it to make money. Like,
Yes,
obviously,
exactly.
20,000 years ago, our collective ancestral humans destroyed things, right? But like they did it in a way that was reciprocal to
Right.
the
Not
land,
just
right? They used the
exactly.
things they had, but they also like took care to make sure that it would be there again later, right?
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
it's crazy. And the crazy thing about capitalism is like, not everyone, but people think like, oh, well, you have to have money to do. I'm like, no, money is an idea and people are using it to perpetuate certain types of systems or,
Sure.
relationships or whatever. Um, I'm just like, look, what we're really doing is deforesting something, for example, to make money to buy some sort of mansion or a nice thing or whatever, which is
Mm-hmm.
just nature put into a certain form that's kind of like, okay, it's kind of like showy, right? It's just like, all right, your mansion. Okay, cool. But it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, people can create luxurious environments without doing all this system, all these systems of extraction to make money, to hoard it, to make, to buy this commodity this hyper luxurious commodity. Like, there's luxury that exists in nature that doesn't require a harmful
Mm.
economic
Yeah.
system to enjoy. You
Sure.
can enjoy luxurious moments without being capitalist, without being capitalistic. Nature provides luxury, and folks can sustainably create luxurious things within their communities. So
Yep.
it's just like such a strange thing to be obsessed with it. It's like, why would you want to sacrifice this just to get this, whatever? It's like underwhelming. It's like, okay, you did all that for that. All
Yeah.
right, man.
It's gross.
It's
It's gross.
yeah, it's cringe. It's like, come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Totally.
If you
Totally.
wanted to be rich so bad, why didn't you figure out something worthwhile to do? Why you like,
Right.
when they're
Yeah.
extra clony, it's just like, oh my God. Of course. Someone
Yeah.
has to exploit this little loophole or whatever. It's disgusting.
Ugh,
And
yeah.
it really doesn't make sense. I would think a common sense thing to think as a human is like, well, we would all want to help develop each other all equally, not disparage each other, because then we'll all be better and then the earth will be more lit for everybody and we'll
Right.
have more cool stuff. Right? But no, we have to fight each other and steal stuff. And it's just like, oh, it could be so cool.
Yeah. We can have a better world, right? It's possible.
Yes. It
It's
literally
possible.
makes more sense to work together. Like, it
Right.
just literally
Yes.
makes more sense. It's
Yep.
like, yeah, well, it's so crazy because it's so absurd, but it's like, the fact that we have such huge weapons and stuff now, these superpower countries having these massive
Yeah.
weapons, is just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, if you think
No, it's horrible.
dominance is worth just like destroying the planets to such a degree, it's like, it's almost like, do you not, it's like, can we not appreciate life? You know what I mean? It's just like,
Right.
oh my God, you have to have this title, you have to have this nation has to be better than that one, and this is like, you know what I mean? All this competition is just like, oh my goodness. Can we not realize, like, I don't know, I keep going back to this. We're in a mystical existence. We're just beings, intelligent beings on a floating rock, and we've got all these different species of stuff. It's so cool to see, like,
Right.
we're literally so cut off from like the most fantastic community ever, which is literally just our ecosystem and all the variety of ways of life there. We've got so many beautiful things here, so many things we could create. Of course, modernization is not a bad thing. We should be creating cool stuff, but it's just like sustainably. And that's what makes me think of like eco-punk. I don't know if you've heard about that kind of movement.
I don't think
it's kind of basically like futuristic type stuff, but in harmony with nature. Ways of living that are highly attuned to be in harmony with nature, but not necessarily like rustic or, old school or whatever, less advanced. No, it's still, and I think that's kind of the direction that makes sense for us to go into, rather than this crude, like, still using oil for cars, even though we know we're overdoing it with the oil. And, there's other ways that alternatives that we can use. And then even though electric could have been maybe a solution, the way it's being mined is messing up the environment even more.
Right, making it worse.
Genociding people over materials for cars and electronics, just absolutely absurd. We can have things without destroying the environment and, doing horrific things to people to create it. We just have to have moderation and balance and just like, I don't know. I have to say it's some sort of sanity about, our values, like in this society, like,
yeah, for sure. So is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I just encourage people. I kept saying engage, and I want to say like engage in every way possible, whatever those layers of socialization, ideas, narratives, fears, whatever that is separating you from other human beings and just relating to human beings as a whole species all at once, where it's like, yeah, we have all these different flavors, all these different types, cool, but we're just, trying to exist on this planet. Like, we all have a common goal. If we can just bring ourselves to ground level and say, oh, fundamentally, there really is no difference between me and any other human being anywhere, no matter what they're going through. And I really think a lot of people don't actually feel that way. Like, even if they might be in solidarity with folks, like, there's still this kind of gap where it's like, you're just so far away. Like, if you can't talk to folks from wherever and learn about folks, get to know them. Like, if you have the opportunity, like, don't be afraid, like, get closer. If you have the means to travel, go there, go see what, it's just like, I think we really need to ground ourselves in a sense of global collective community and understanding, we're all in this together, and that you should have urgency for everything going on as if it was your own neighbors, that you should not separate. Well, okay, I care, but they're like, no, everyone matters. We all matter. And stop this identity. It's important to acknowledge our identities, but I think at some point we just have to be like, as all humans, like, let's just care about our overall collective condition. That's honestly, I'll keep it really simple. That's honestly what I think.
That's awesome. So where can listeners find you on social media?
So I'm on Instagram as Whatsqualia. I'm on TikTok as Whatsqualia. I try to post inspiring stuff. I try to keep people informed. I also create stuff, and I'm just vibing, being myself, trying stuff out, getting to know folks. So yes, very wonderful to meet you if you're seeing me for the first time. And I hope we grow and decolonize and liberate ourselves together and lift each other up and make something beautiful happen. That's my affirmation for everyone.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. This has been great. Hopefully we'll collab on stuff in the future.
Absolutely. Sounds wonderful.
All right. Thanks, Indigo.
Thank you.
That does it for the show. Thanks for listening. Voices from the Left is a presentation of the Anti-Capitalist Podcast Network. Special thanks to Nick Josephs for the use of the theme song. You can find Nick on Spotify or on the web at nickjosephs.com. Don't forget to rate and review on whichever platform you listen. If you'd like to support the show, you can subscribe at patreon.com/voicesfromtheleft or donate at buymeacoffee.com/voicesfromtheleft. All the links will be in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and solidarity.